Hello and welcome. You're watching Business Today TV. I'm Sakshi Patra. Well, the countdown has begun. The country's biggest firm by market capitalization, Reliance Industries, will hold its 45th annual general meeting in just about 20 minutes from now. And now this, as we all know, is one event which is very, very closely tracked by the stock market community, the investors, the shareholders, the analysts, all of them alike. But what is the big significance of this Reliance Industries AGM? And why is it such a big deal? What can this AGM also have in it for you? To discuss all of this, I'm going to be joined by Siddharth Zarabi, Managing Editor, Business Today TV, who has tracked these meetings for years. Welcome, Siddharth, and thank you so much for taking the time out for this discussion. Now, Siddharth, I remember these meetings have been time and again been labeled as carnivals by market experts due to the historically what we've seen, huge attendance at Birla Matoshri Sabhagriha Hall. And slowly and gradually over the last few years, we've seen the shift to virtual address as well, also because of the pandemic. Help us understand, how have you seen, Reliance Industries AGMs change over the years and increase in its importance and significance for everybody?
Well, in some ways, the AGMs of Reliance Industries were always one of the biggest events in the annual calendar of our stock markets and our economy. And since 2016 is when the AGM really took off in the current context. The late founder of the group had ensured that shareholders would get into a stadium to discuss things at the annual general meeting. And what Mr. Mukesh Ambani, the 65-year-old chairman and managing director, did in 2016 is where we could focus on. In 2016, if you recall, the Jio announcement came, and ever since the AGM of Reliance Industries became a very sort of well-produced, choreographed event which had strategic business announcements packaged into it for a much wider audience than just the shareholders. And also remember that Mr. Mukesh Ambani, like Warren Buffett, speaks only perhaps once or twice a year. And that's why this is extremely important. Given Reliance's size and given its multiple businesses and its leadership position in these businesses, it's not just an address to shareholders of RIL. I would say that shareholders of other companies where Reliance, in those sectors where Reliance operates, perhaps need to pay equal attention to what one of the biggest competitors on the block is doing. So a lot of anticipation. It makes sense because this is the forum where RIL has provided long-term strategic direction through the chairman over the last several years.
Yeah, absolutely. Now we'll talk about the big announcements that could be made today by Chairman Mukesh Ambani. This time, Reliance Industries, very interestingly, will also be broadcasting the AGM simultaneously on a virtual reality platform, where Mukesh Ambani will virtually address the shareholders in an immersive or an interactive 3D world of the metaverse. So that's going to be something very, very exciting. Help our viewers really understand, how is this going to play out? What will it be? How will it be different from the previous AGMs?
Well, you are right. And since Reliance Industries is also one of the largest networks in India, they have the broadband pipe. And it's only logical, therefore, that Mukesh Ambani will be in the metaverse for this AGM announcement speech that will start in 10 minutes from now. We are told that it's going to be a pretty long speech. So be prepared for well over perhaps an hour and a half or thereabout. So it's almost like a budget speech that I'm looking at it in terms of the timeline. But what's on the agenda? There are 3 or 4 major points that we have picked up, and we'll have to wait for the speech. But this is what is the general consensus at this time, and I hope we are right on that. First, details on the 5th generation mobile services, the 5G services play of Jio. That's point number 1, and we can discuss that. The second, clarity and a path forward on Reliance Retail. Is it going to get listed? Are there any timelines that are going to be offered? several years ago, the RIL chairman had spoken about the Aramco deal. So,
Yes.
very substantial details were announced at that time in the traditional business as well as the Geo entire play out. So 5G, because that is what will be the latest foray from Geo. Second, retail. The third, I expect some color and details on acquisitions. There is one acquisition that has just been announced, which is related to retail. This is Metro Cash and Carry, which is
Yes.
a wholesaler, a German company, and an open offer of around 5,600 crore that RIL has made. There is, of course, another bid. Could there be some more details about the succession planning? Because remember,
Yes.
in the recent past, there have been some details that have been offered on that. We don't know whether that will happen, but overall, apart from these, RIL has also been making strategic small acquisitions, high technology acquisitions in what
Yeah.
I call the new frontier areas, because telecom is not a new frontier, it's clean energy and all of that. That is the new frontier. And in that new frontier, if there is more detail, I'm sure investors will lap it up, especially because, and I want to end this point here, because in the last year or 2 years, we have seen this new saga being built up, at least in the headlines, which is
Yes.
Ambani versus Adani. And
Very
in that
true.
Adani, some areas where both are in a way going head to head, competing as naturally companies should. I don't prefer to call it a clash. I don't think it's a clash. It's just two large companies with massive ambition to get
Compete for
into
the
and
top
capture
spot.
market share, which is fine. And I think that will also be a subtle sort of between reading the tea leaves that we'll have to do from the speech. Sakshi.
Absolutely. Now, Siddharth, while you talk about Adani versus Ambani, I mean, like how people are looking at it, who's going to be the top person right there in terms of the business conglomerate that they both have. There's also something that we are looking out for is the new energy business. Now, remember last time they had announced a foray and, they'd also talked about a net carbon zero target by 2035. So, are there any capex plans that one could really expect over here? Because Adani for itself has already announced a huge investment plan in the new energy business. So could this be an opportunity where Mukesh Ambani could look at, massive plans towards this respect?
Okay, so when it comes to clean energy, there are details that RIL has already offered us in the past. The clean energy business, and I'm not specifically commenting on what we can expect from RIL, the clean energy business primarily falls in the solar and the stored power frontier, which will power the electric revolution. We have abundant solar power. There are lots of companies that are operating in that space. But the latest frontier, and that's where it sort of is involved with high tech, which is batteries, which is the ability to store power for cheap and safely, as some battery fires have shown to Indian consumers, and for the long term. So that's where some interesting work has been done by RIL. They also made some months ago an acquisition in that space. If there is more clarity and detailing offered around that, that would be quite good. So I expect that the clean energy future that Mr. Ambani has spoken about in the recent past, we could perhaps get some more granular details on that as well.
Okay. Also, of course, the company did fix 19th August 2022 as a record date for the FY22 dividend. That may also get announced, I think, in the RIL AGM. Now, the board has recommended about 8 rupees per share kind of a dividend. Could all of it get, be announced? Or
yeah, absolutely. And for shareholders who have been enjoying a RIL dividend for quite some time, in fact, that's part of the RIL market magic and its history and its connect with shareholders. And you also have to remember that a couple of years ago, Mr. Ambani had indicated very clearly that the big investment phase, the capex phase of RIL's evolution and transformation, moving away from old energy kind of and O2C kind of company into newer frontier areas, that was over. And the biggest of those investments is obviously Jio, followed by the entire retail play. Now, the clean energy foray, it's my sense, unless some bigger plans are announced, not at the same capex intensity as a telecom network, Sakshi.
Yes.
It doesn't require that kind of capex intensity. So, broadly to the point, and without commenting on the specifics of the dividend, is there greater cash flow free with RIL to return some to its shareholders? The obvious answer is a clear yes.
Okay, so that perhaps maybe good news coming in for the shareholders right there. You talked about the stock. The stock has been performing well in the, slightly in the green in an otherwise very subdued and a weak market today. But over this year to date, we've seen a 10.5% increase in RIL share. And that is going to be an extremely important task because, in the historic, we've also seen a mixed reaction to this AGM. Like we remember in 2019, the stock markets were shut on the day of the AGM, but following day, it ran about 10% odd. The following 2 years, we've actually seen a dip of 2 and 4% odd respectively. So it remains to be seen what is the market really looking out for. If they get those answers, if they get, big bang announcements, fireworks right there, the stock could well reward the shareholders right there. But we've also got, Siddharth, some brokerage house reports. We're talking about 3,100 plus kind of targets already in today's sessions. We got CLSA reports too. What else could be on the radar that, that markets could be watching out for?
Regardless of what happens, and I was trying to catch a look on the screen for the RIL counter because there's just 1.5 minute left. But remember, RIL is a stock that a lot of people, when we talk to them, they say it's a classic buy the dip stock. If there is a dip, you buy and accumulate RIL for the long term. A company that has also, what should be remembered is the deep debt, the sort of retirement of debt that has been done by RIL over the recent past. And that is also a phenomenal story. So one of the strongest balance sheets, not just in India, but I would reckon in the world in terms of a conglomerate of this kind with multiple businesses and the speed with which it has executed this very, very strategic shift. And obviously, the IPO timeline, if it were to come today, will perhaps provide some cheer to existing shareholders because they would perhaps stand to also benefit.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for that, Siddharth. We'll just wait in 30 seconds. Perhaps the Reliance AGM will get started and all of our viewers can catch all that live update on all of our social media platforms, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, it'll be all along. And, you can catch glimpses of it on Instagram as well. So wherever you are, you will definitely find those live updates on Business Today TV. So thank you for that. And after the AGM, we'll join in with a full panel to decode and to analyze how the AGM has gone by. So thank you so much, Siddharth, for all those insights.
Bye-bye. Thank you very much.
Thanks.